You are not stuck, you are being prepared. This is the name of this series that I'm going to be teaching us some principles I've learned over many years in life and ministry. One of the challenges that I've experienced and that I find that many believers experience, it's when they are caught between the period when they receive a prophetic word from the Lord and the time of its manifestation. And there's usually a period of time called the wilderness season. And how you are able to go through this wilderness season will determine if you are going to end up fulfilling God's purpose for your life or not. And so over the next 7 episodes, I'm going to be sharing with you some of the principles based on the scriptures that I believe that if you are able to get these principles at work in your life, it will give you the faith, the patience, and the perseverance to wait on God until the fulfillment of God's vision for your life. So on this first episode, I want to talk about something that is powerful. I want to talk about the geography of preparation. The geography of preparation. What do I mean by this? Understanding where you are spiritually and emotionally. Before we go into this journey, it's important that you understand where you are spiritually and emotionally. And I want to start by asking you a question. Have you ever felt like life is going nowhere? Have you ever felt like you are going around in circles? I have been in this position, and I've been in the wilderness position for a very, very long time, and in different phases in my life. I remember when I finished university and the Lord began to speak to me that I was called into the ministry. One of the things that He said to me exclusively is that He wanted me to wait on Him for Him to give me the next direction when it comes to ministry. And for the next 4 to 5 years, I was going about from one organization to another, one job to another. It feels like I was wandering around the wilderness. I was doing so many things, but I knew that that was not what God had called me to do. And eventually, after about 4 to 5 years, the Lord finally opened a window for me to begin to serve in the ministry that I'm currently serving right now. But within that period of time, I was very frustrated. I was angry sometimes, and there were so many questions in my head I couldn't explain. My family was asking questions, my friends were asking questions that I couldn't explain. And I'm sure you have a similar story where you have delayed promises and you are feeling stuck and you're looking at your friends getting married, having open doors, and it feels as though your life is moving at the pace of a snail. Sometimes you wonder if there is a generational curse over your family. Sometimes you wonder if you did something wrong. If you have that worry on the inside of you, I want you to stick around, because the truths that I'm going to be sharing will change your life. Let me establish a biblical pattern when it comes to preparation, when it comes to destiny fulfillment. The first example is the example of Joseph. Joseph spent 13 years from the period that he received the dream and revelation that he was going to be someone great to the time that he became prime minister of Egypt. I want you to think about it. 13 long years. And in those 13 years, the Lord was taking him through a process where the Lord was building in him the capacity and the ability for him to become all the promises that God had promised him. Another example is Moses. Moses spent 40 years in the wilderness. Moses was the prince of Egypt. Moses was a man full of wisdom and understanding, but he spent 40 years in the wilderness. And in those 40 years, he lost his vision for what God had called him to do. He thought that his life had become a shepherd, but God was preparing in him a deliverer. Another example is David. It took 15 plus years from the time Samuel met David and anointed him king over Israel to the time he finally ascended the throne. It took Paul the apostle 3 years from the time he received the encounter with the Lord Jesus to the time in which he became a minister of the gospel. He spent 3 years in Arabia. And so if you're spending so much time, if you're telling yourself, I've been in this process for 5 years, for 7 years, for 10 years, I want you to know that you are in good company. This is a blueprint the scriptures tells us that God uses to raise his people. You see, before God will promote you and launch you into your destiny, he will have to prepare you. God prepares his people before he promotes them. And these are 6 signs you are in preparation. So I want you right now, get a piece of paper or open your notepad, and I want you to note these signs. If you experience these signs in your life, then you are in a season of preparation. The first sign is a clear calling but closed doors. Have you ever been in that situation where you know God has called you, you've received prophetic words, you've received dreams, the Lord has spoken to you directly, you are very clear about who you are supposed to be and what you're supposed to do, but doors are closed, and so you are frustrated. You're probably trapped in a job you don't like, or you find yourself in an environment where you cannot express yourself. The second sign is repeated testing. Have you found that you're going through a season of one test after another? By the time you're done with this test, another test comes. You feel like you're in a continual and perpetual season of warfare. If you have experiencing one test after another, it's probably a sign that God is preparing you. The third sign is identity stripping. And this is very painful, where you find that God is stripping you from what you believed about yourself. He's stripping you from your old identity and bringing a new identity to you. God had to strip Moses from being the prince of Egypt to becoming a deliverer. God had to strip David from becoming a shepherd boy to becoming the king of Israel. Before God launches you into your destiny, he will strip you from the identity that is currently holding you bound. The next is learning unrelated skills. Do you find that God is pushing you in areas where you're learning things that are unrelated to your passion? Maybe you're called into ministry as I was, and you're right now in the business learning administration, learning project management. You find yourself doing a job, doing things that are not related to your passion. But anytime you feel like moving, you feel the nudge of God that this is where you're supposed to be. If you find yourself in that position, God is preparing you. Number 5, God feels silent but present. It feels as though God is distant from you, but you are aware of his presence. And this is very difficult to explain, because around you, you are not seeing the frequent manifestation of the power of God, the frequent manifestation of the favor of God. But in your private prayer time, you can hear his voice. In your private prayer time, you sense the peace of God in your heart. So you know that God is with you, even though exteriorly it looks like you are in a wilderness. And number 6, internal growth before external results. Do you find that you are in a position where you are growing more on the inside than you're growing outwardly? When everyone looks at you, they don't see any visible sign, but you know that God has been building you on the inside. He's building character. He's building your personality. He's honing your giftings. Nobody is seeing the growth, but when you look on the inside, you know you are growing. Now, let me talk about our African context, because for those of you that are watching me from Africa, you know we have a unique environment. And the unique environment is because there is a lot of communal and family pressure when it comes to the fulfillment of purpose and destiny. What are some of these pressures? For example, cultural timelines. You might be a season of preparation, but your family is putting pressure on you to get married, pressure on you to make money, pressure on you to have kids. But you know that God has brought you into a wilderness season and has told you that marriage will not come in the next 5 years. God has told you that you need to wait for the next 3 years before you have kids. God has told you that it's not time for you to have a job. How do you explain to your family your process? So in our African context, there's a lot of pressures. Marriage pressures, financial expectations. And you know, in our African context, everything you do, you don't do it for yourself. You do it for your siblings, your friends, and your community. And so every decision you make, even the decision you make to pursue God, is going to affect your entire community. And I know a lot of people who have aborted their prophetic destiny because they succumb to the pressure of their community. So I want you to look at your life right now, understanding the geography of where you are. Look at yourself emotionally and spiritually. The things I'm talking about, does it resonate with you? And I want you to note it down. As I get ready to close this session, I want you to know this: the waiting is not wasted. I know right now you're feeling frustrated. You wake up every single morning like you feel like there is a pregnancy, that like you are pregnant. Like there is a baby that you're about to bring forth. It's a spiritual baby. You wake up and you go online and you see your friends and other people doing what God has called you to do. But you feel this invisible force restraining you to wait. I want you to know that you are not stuck. You are being prepared. And I want to speak strength to those of you listening to me right now, because I've been through this season where I felt frustrated, empty, and I needed someone to speak strength. And so I want to speak strength and courage to you. If you're listening to me right now and you have abandoned your dreams, if you're listening to me right now and you have forgotten where you wrote the prophetic words, if you're listening to me right now and you've given up on what God told you, I want you to go back. God is not done with you yet. He's preparing you, he's developing in you, he's working on the inside of you. And even though physically you are not seeing any results, I want you to trust the process. You are becoming the person that will fulfill the prophetic words. I want you to know this: when God showed you your vision, he was not intending that the current version of you would fulfill it. The vision that God has given to you was supposed to be fulfilled from a more upgraded and higher version of who you are. And God must transform you from the inside out to become the version of the person that will bring the fulfillment of that word. So here's my practical challenge for you. I want you to journal one area where God may be preparing you. Think about it, pray about it, journal one area God may be preparing you. And I want you to share that journal entry with a friend, with a pastor, with a mentor, and say, I feel like God is preparing me to become this, but this is what is building on the inside of me. And if you enjoy this particular video, I want you to look for the next part. In the next part, I'm going to be talking about what God builds in the wilderness. See you.